Hey guys, tonight we are going to start the day way too early in ancient Rome. You're not a famous general, not an emperor, not even a senator. You're just you. A slightly sleepy person who somehow ended up with front row tickets to one of the most ordinary but weirdly luxurious experiences of Roman life, a full day inside a public bathhouse, from dawn until closing. You probably won't survive this as an actual Roman, by the way. Between the germs, the social pressure, and the lack of deodorant, you'd tap out by lunchtime. But as a listener, you're safe. You just get the good parts. The marble, the warm water, the gossip, and the slow, soothing rhythm of a day that's half self-care routine, half group hangout. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're awake enough, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. Are you a midnight in Texas person, a 6 a.m. in Singapore person, or a it's 3 p.m. and I'm listening at work anyway kind of rebel? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The city is still half asleep when you step out into the Roman street. The sky above you is a pale, washed-out gray, the kind of color that promises dawn but hasn't quite decided to commit. The air is cool, carrying that faint, dusty chill that always clings to stone after a night. The cobblestones under your sandals are slightly damp in patches where last night's spills, water, wine, who knows, still cling in the cracks. Rome is never truly silent, but this is as close as it gets. Somewhere far off, a cart rattles slowly. A dog barks once, then apparently thinks better of it. A rooster, clearly the overachiever of the neighborhood, is announcing the morning to anyone who doesn't own a sundial. You pull your cloak a little tighter around yourself and start walking. You know where you're going. Everyone knows where the baths are. They sit like a kind of marble magnet in the city's daily routine. For a lot of Romans, the public baths are as normal as your shower. Except instead of standing alone in a bathroom scrolling your phone, you share your hygiene routine with a few hundred of your closest strangers. As you move through the streets, shutters are still mostly closed. A few shopkeepers are just beginning to lift wooden panels, letting a soft glow spill out from lit oil lamps inside. Bakery doors open here and there, and the smell of fresh bread drifts toward you. Warm, yeasty, impossibly inviting. You make a mental note to come back later. For now, your goal is cleanliness, not carbs. You'll totally fail at that later. The closer you get to the baths, the more the city begins to feel awake. You start to see other people heading in the same direction. A man in a worn but clean tunic, carrying a small bundle of towels and sandals. A father and teenage son talking quietly. A pair of older men arguing already, gesturing with their hands as if the sun itself depends on their opinion. Above the rooftops ahead, you can see it. A faint, pale cloud of steam rising into the morning air. The bathhouse is already breathing. From the outside, the building doesn't look sleepy at all. Even in this dim early light, it's impressive. Massive stone walls, tall windows, and a wide entrance with columns that make you feel shorter than you already are. If you've picked a fancy complex, like the Baths of Caracalla or something similar, the place is practically a palace dedicated to water. Mainstream historical fact break delivered gently. By the height of the empire, huge bath complexes were a standard part of city life. Romans of many social classes visited them almost daily, which is wild when you remember how old this world is compared to your modern plumbing. For a small entry fee, you get hot water, cold water, exercise space, body care, gossip, and occasionally someone's political rant. Your gym membership wishes it was this efficient. You pause for a moment across the street just to take it in. You can hear the faint murmur of voices from within, echoes bouncing off stone walls and vaulted ceilings, turning individual conversations into a low, soothing hum. You can smell something like warm stone, damp air, and a hint of scented oil sneaking out through the entrance. It's not exactly spa day, but it's close enough for a world without electric candles and whale song playlists. You cross over and join the small flow of early arrivals heading up the steps. On your left, a boy with a basket full of little flasks tries to catch someone's attention, offering cheap oil that may or may not smell like anything other than olive. On your right, an older woman, wrapped tightly in a shawl, is walking in the opposite direction, probably towards a different bathhouse or the women's hours later in the day. Historians still argue whether men and women commonly bathed at the same time or in completely separate shifts. But for your sleepy little tour here, you're slipping in with the early male crowd. You step into the shadow of the entrance. Immediately, the sound changes. The street noise drops away behind you, replaced by a deeper echo, the footsteps of sandaled feet on stone, the faint splash of water from somewhere inside. The air is warmer here and carries more steam. You're not even near the hot rooms yet, but the whole building feels like it's exhaling heat from yesterday's fires. Near the doorway, a doorkeeper sits at a small table. He looks like a man who has judged more sandals than any person should have to. You reach for your coin. The entry fee is low enough that even ordinary citizens can afford it most days. That's one of the quirks of Roman life. The empire may be unequal in 1,000 brutal ways, but public bathing is surprisingly democratic. You pay, and he nods, sliding the coin away with a practiced flick. Some bath complexes, according to one quirky tidbit from old graffiti and later writers, even had funny little messages scratched into the walls about forgotten items and stolen towels. A reminder that no matter how elegant the architecture, someone is always walking home in damp regret because they didn't keep an eye on their sandals. You make a mental note to remember where you put yours. You will still almost definitely forget. You follow the curve of the hallway, your footsteps joining the layered sounds ahead. The light here is from high windows and flickering lamps set into the walls, painting everything in soft gold and shadow. The floors are smooth beneath your feet, worn gently by generations of people who did this same slow, ordinary thing. Walk in dusty, walk out clean. You pass a small side room where you can just glimpse movement, slaves shifting bundles, someone dragging a basket of firewood, the quiet hustle before the day truly begins. You're not supposed to go back there. That's the backstage area where the real work of making the baths feel magical actually happens. You'll get closer to that world in the next stretch of the day. For now, you're just a customer with a slightly stiff back, a thin layer of city dust on your skin, and the simple, luxurious goal of spending hours doing almost nothing productive. You step out of the narrow entrance passage and into a larger space where the ceiling opens up and the first true echo greets you. Somewhere deeper in the complex, water splashes, a man laughs, and someone calls out to a friend. The day is starting. The fires have been burning since before dawn, and the whole building is warming itself up for you. You take a slow breath, feeling the air grow thicker, warmer, and just a little damp. The outside world is behind you now. Inside these walls, the hours will stretch and blur, turning into something soft and strangely restful. And all you've done so far is arrive.
You haven't even taken off your sandals yet, and already the bathhouse is busy for your sake. Not busy where you can see it, of course. Up here, everything is designed to feel effortless. Smooth floors, high arches, shafts of gentle light, the soft murmur of people who have decided that, yes, the most important task today is becoming slightly cleaner and dramatically more relaxed. But under your feet and behind the walls, it's a different world entirely. If you could peel the bathhouse open like a dollhouse, you'd see them, figures moving in half-dark, in spaces that are too low to stand up straight, ducking under stone arches and over hot bricks. Slaves, hired laborers, poor free men. Historians still argue whether most of the staff were enslaved workers or low-paid employees, but either way, nobody down there is having a spa day. You catch only hints of it at first. A faint thump somewhere deep in the building, the hollow, distant scrape of a shovel on stone, the ghost of wood smoke threading through the warmer, wetter air. You step aside for a moment as a boy with a bundle of towels half his size hurries past, eyes focused straight ahead in that "if I drop this, my boss will actually explode" kind of way. On the surface, everything looks calm. In a small open courtyard you pass, a man is sweeping the floor with slow, patient strokes, the bristles swooshing over stone. In a side niche, another worker is carefully refilling a bronze oil dispenser, his fingers already slick, the rich smell of olive oil and faint herbs drifting toward you. The oil is more important than soap here. Romans are big on the whole rub yourself with oil and scrape it off later approach. It sounds odd, but your skin will appreciate it. Your laundry, less so. Beneath all of this, the heat engines of the bathhouse are waking up. You imagine it as you move slowly down a corridor, fingertips brushing the wall. Below you, in the furnace rooms, men are feeding enormous brick ovens, praefurnia, with armfuls of wood. The fires have been burning for hours already, but they still need attention, still demand more fuel. Flames roar in low arched openings, the light inside a vivid orange that paints the stokers' faces in flickering color. Here comes your mainstream historical fact. Roman baths used a system called a hypocaust to heat floors and walls. Hot air from those furnaces travels through hollow spaces under the floor and inside the walls, turning the entire room into a kind of ancient radiator. It's clever, efficient, and absolutely terrible if you're the one whose job it is to crawl around where the temperature feels like the inside of an oven. One man, his tunic darkened with sweat, grabs another basket of split logs. He wipes his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of ash, then tosses more fuel into the open mouth of the furnace. Sparks leap up and vanish into the hot draft. He doesn't get marble. He doesn't get scented oil. He gets soot in his lungs and the satisfaction of knowing people upstairs will be perfectly warm without ever thinking about how. Above him,
You step over a section of floor that, to you, is just pleasantly solid and cool under your sandals. You have no idea that if you could look down through it, you'd see pillars of stacked tiles, like little toadstools, holding up the surface while hot air creeps through the gaps. The floor of the hot room you'll visit later will be laid over a whole forest of these tile mushrooms, raised just enough for scorching air to slide beneath your toes. You pass another doorway and glimpse a different kind of preparation. Here, in a long, narrow room, slaves are wringing out cloths and laying them over wooden rods to dry. The towels are simple, linen or wool, nothing glamorous, but they're precious. Losing one is not just annoying, it's expensive. Somewhere in the empire, someone is already composing a grumpy inscription about stolen towels. You know it. One young woman, hair bound back, works quietly at a table with small clay flasks. She's mixing scented oils, olive oil with a little myrtle, a touch of rosemary, maybe some imported essence if today is a good day. Nothing is labeled, everything is based on habit and memory. She probably couldn't explain the recipe to you, but her hands know exactly how many drops to add. It's one of those quirky bathhouse details. For the Romans, the smell of the baths is part of the experience, not overwhelming like a modern perfume shop, but a background aura of warmth, oil, skin, stone, and faint herbs. If you come here long enough, your brain will map that scent to, oh, it's time to relax. In another back corner, someone is cleaning strigils, the curved metal scrapers that will later be used to remove oil, sweat, and dust from all those lounging bodies. Each one gets wiped down, buffed a little, set into neat rows. You don't think about it, but there's a quiet choreography in making sure you don't share skin gunk with the entire city. The water is on the move too. Some of it arrives by aqueduct, rushing along channels that stretch for miles outside the city, dipping gently so gravity can do all the work. Some of it is stored in cisterns, waiting in dark, cool silence. Servants open and close little gates, directing it toward big open tanks or into lead pipes. Yes, lead. No, it's not great for long-term health. Yes, historians still argue whether everyday exposure in water and pipes made a huge difference or not. You, fortunately, are only here for one imaginary day, and are therefore safe from the blood pressure drama. Boys haul buckets from place to place, topping up basins, splashing water over floors to keep the dust down. In one room, two men are debating, loudly but without much urgency, about whether the frigidarium, the cold pool, should be refilled completely today or just cooled down with fresh water. One insists that a true cold plunge requires a full refresh. The other points at the amount of hauling required and raises an eyebrow in the universal language of, "Be serious." You drift along the corridor at your own pace, absorbing all of this without actually seeing most of it. That's the point. The work is hidden, so your experience can feel smooth. The wall under your palm vibrates faintly for a moment as someone slams a furnace door below. You feel a brief gust of warmer air moving through some unseen vent. a reminder that this place is not just stone and water, but a carefully tuned machine, more alive than it looks. You pass a niche where a small shrine sits, maybe to Fortuna or to the genius of the baths themselves. A little offering tray waits there, holding a few old coins and a dried wreath. Someone has tucked a tiny clay lamp beside it, still unlit, like a quiet promise to light it later. Even in a space dedicated to very practical things, cleaning, relaxing, networking, Romans still like to weave the divine into the margins. Somewhere beyond, you hear a voice call out, amused and tired at the same time. "More wood!" Another voice answers from further away. "More boys!" You can't help but smile. The bathhouse depends on both. Without the fuel, the hippocaust would cool. The caldarium would be lukewarm, and Romans would complain for days. Without the boys running errands, refilling towels, ferrying messages, the whole delicate flow would tangle into chaos. You pause for a moment by an opening where you can look down a short stairway. You're not supposed to go further, but you can see enough. The glow of furnace light, the silhouettes of men moving quickly, the shimmer of heat that blurs their outlines. One man glances up, wipes his brow, and then turns back to his work. You stand there in your cleaner tunic, your sandals still mostly dusted from the morning street, and realize just how much heat is being poured into this building so you can sigh contentedly later in a hot room and think you've earned it. You step back from the stairwell and continue on, letting the door to that lower world slip out of your sight. Up here, you're heading toward the changing room, where everyone will act like the bathhouse is just a simple, everyday luxury. Down there, they are still feeding the beast. Wood into fire, fire into air, air into walls and floors, so that when you finally slip into the water, it will feel perfectly, thoughtlessly right.
All you have to do is keep walking. You followed the echoing corridor, tracked the warmth in the walls, and listened to the bathhouse breathing under your feet. Now it's time to officially stop being a person of the streets and become a person of the baths. That transition happens in a surprisingly small moment, handing over money. You come around a last gentle bend and step into a wider, brighter space, the main entrance hall that leads toward the changing room. Light spills down from high windows, catching dust motes and curls of steam floating lazily in the air. The floor is smooth and cool, made of patterned stone that's seen more bare feet than any sandal shop could ever dream of. Along one side of the room sits the man who stands between you and clean pores, the collector. He's at a small counter or table, something that manages to look both official and vaguely bored at the same time. In front of him, on the polished surface, are a few small boxes, maybe some clay tokens, and a stack of coins that never seems to get any taller no matter how many people pay. So either he's constantly putting them away, or he has a side business that you probably shouldn't ask about. You join the short line forming in front of him. The people around you are a little more awake now.
One man in front of you yawns so widely you can practically see what he had for dinner. Another is already in full conversation mode, animatedly telling his friend about yesterday's chariot race, with hand gestures and outraged, "I swear the driver cheated" energy. When it's your turn, you step forward and reach for your coin. The fee is small enough that even ordinary citizens can afford regular visits, something like the cost of a basic snack, not a massive luxury. That's your mainstream historical fact for the moment. Roman public baths were priced to be widely accessible, especially in big cities. The emperor wants you clean, calm, and mildly distracted, not sweaty and complaining in the forum. You set your coin down on the table with a soft clink. The collector doesn't look thrilled, but he doesn't look displeased either. He's in that neutral, dead-eyed customer service zone that transcends time. If he had a slogan, it would be, "I have seen everything, and none of it impresses me." He sweeps your payment toward a tray, and in some bath complexes might pass you a small token, a little piece of metal or clay to show you've paid, or to correspond to a particular service. In others, it's more informal. Either way, there's now a quiet little record that you exist in this building today as one more body to be warmed, cooled, scrubbed, and mildly judged. Behind you, the street sound is now almost completely gone. The city is still out there, with its carts and shouting vendors and the occasional argument over whose goat did what. But inside this hall, everything echoes differently. A cough bounces up toward the ceiling. A laugh stretches out longer than usual. Sandals slap quietly on the stone. You feel yourself crossing an invisible line, not just from outside to inside, but from everyday life to bathhouse rhythm. You move away from the collector's table as the next person steps up. On the walls, there are a few painted decorations. Nothing too grand, but enough to make you feel that this is a proper public space. Maybe there's a small fresco of a figure pouring water from a jug, or a scene of people swimming in a pool that makes the whole business look more graceful than it actually is. Perhaps someone years ago scratched a crude doodle into a corner that no one important ever bothered to notice. One quirky tidbit that surfaces in your mind: some ancient writers talk about bathhouse doorkeepers and attendants calling out the time, reminding people when sessions were ending or when certain rooms were opening. Imagine a kind of ancient gym employee shouting, "Hot room's ready! Try not to pass out this time!" in Latin. There's a decent chance you'd suddenly remember an urgent appointment elsewhere. From here, you can see the doorway that leads on to the apoditarium, the changing room. People drift in and out of it like schools of fish, appearing with bundles of clothing, disappearing wrapped in towels or nothing at all. You walk slowly toward that doorway, feeling the last fingers of cool morning air slide away behind you. The temperature steps up here just slightly. The air is thicker, more humid. There's a faint glimmer of water-reflected light dancing on the ceiling from somewhere deeper in. As you walk, you pass a niche where someone has set up a small stall. The person behind it, maybe a freedman who's carved out a little business here, has a neat arrangement of flasks, combs, and small trinkets. If you didn't bring your own oil, you can buy some here. The vendor leans forward, offering a sniff of a particular blend that smells like something between fresh herbs and "I'm trying too hard on a first date." You smile. Shake your head and keep walking. You're here for the experience, not to smell like a whole garden. Another stall offers little snacks, dried fruit, nuts, maybe some cheap wine. You can already sense how the bathhouse isn't just about water. It's about selling you small comforts at every stage. It's basically a wellness center disguised as a social hub, disguised as a slightly damp shopping mall. Historians still argue whether the entrance sequence was always this standardized. Pay here, change there, then move through the rooms in a set order, or whether different bath complexes encouraged more wandering, improvisational use. But for you tonight, your path is clear and smooth. You're following the general flow, letting the building guide you like a very large, very steamy river. You reach the threshold of the changing room. From here, you can see rows of benches, niches in the walls for clothes, a crowd of bodies in varying degrees of undress, and the unmistakable vibe of, "I hope I remember where I put my stuff." The air is warmer again, tinged with the smell of skin, oil, and just a hint of anxiety. Before you step through, you glance back one last time. The entrance hall, with its collector and small stalls, feels already a little distant, like the beginning of a dream you're drifting deeper into. You've paid, you've left the street behind, the furnaces beneath you are roaring, the water is waiting, and your day of doing absolutely nothing productive in the most structured, communal way possible is about to properly begin. You adjust your cloak on your shoulders, take a breath of the humid air, and step forward into the changing room, where you'll trade your clothes and a bit of your sense of privacy for a towel, some oil, and a whole lot of echoing conversation. For now, the only thing you need to worry about is this. Just try to remember where you leave your sandals. You and history both know that's not going to happen.
The moment you step into the changing room, the bathhouse stops being a building and starts being a situation. The apoditarium, the fancy word for room where everyone gets half naked and confused at the same time, spreads out in front of you. It's bigger than you'd expect, high-ceilinged and echoing, with rows of benches running along the walls, and sometimes in neat lines down the middle. Above and behind those benches are recesses in the walls, shelves, cubby holes, niches carved into stone, all waiting to swallow people's belongings. The air is warmer here, thicker with the smell of skin and oil and damp cloth. Conversations bounce from wall to wall. Greetings, complaints about the cold outside, enthusiastic retellings of yesterday's race, and at least one guy loudly insisting that the water was hotter back when he was young. There is always someone who thinks the past was better in every century. You hesitate for a heartbeat near the doorway, letting your eyes adjust. Men of all ages move around you in various states of undress. Some are already wrapped in towels, heading out toward the exercise yard or one of the pools. Others are just arriving like you, tugging off sandals, untying belts, shrugging out of cloaks and tunics. A few stand there in that awkward moment of pause, clearly having the same thought you do. Where exactly do I put my stuff so it doesn't vanish? A helpful mainstream historical fact for your now slightly anxious brain. Theft in Roman bathhouses was common enough that it shows up in jokes, court cases, and graffiti. People complained about stolen sandals, cloaks, and jewelry the way you complain about someone taking your marked food out of the office fridge. It's not deadly. It's just deeply annoying.
You find a spot along one bench that looks relatively open and sit down. The stone is cool through your tunic, grounding you in the midst of all this echoing movement. Around you, a small drama plays out. A man slightly older than you is scolding a boy who's clearly some kind of attendant. The man slaps a hand against an empty niche and insists he left his sandals right there yesterday. The boy shrugs, palms up, wearing the universal expression of, "Sir, this is a Wendy's," centuries before Wendy's exists. Somewhere on a Roman street, someone is strutting around in a very nice pair of not their sandals. You exhale, amused, and try to learn from this cautionary tale. You loosen your belt and start to undress. The motions are simple, familiar, and yet they feel oddly ceremonial in here. Cloak off first, you fold it, well, fold-ish, and set it into a niche with the care of someone who has just watched a live-action warning about theft. Tunic next, pulled over your head in a soft swoosh of fabric, leaving you in a simple undergarment and a mild awareness that your modern concept of personal bubble doesn't exist yet. There's a moment of vulnerability here that you can feel even across the centuries. Your clothes are not just fabric, they're a big chunk of your identity and your protection in a world without fast fashion. Losing your cloak hurts your wallet, not just your pride. And for a brief stretch of time in this room, you're mostly just a body, not a person with a job or a title or a reputation, just another human being with skin, hair, and the usual assortment of awkward angles. You tuck your belt and sandals carefully into the same niche, trying to memorize it. Third recess from the column, above the guy with the red cloak, below the slightly crooked brick. You repeat the image to yourself like a spell. You know, on some level, that future you is absolutely going to forget this, but you try anyway. Nearby, an attendant, often a slave or a poor free youth, moves quickly along the benches, keeping an eye on the flow. In some bathhouses, these attendants act as unofficial locker guards. In others, they are less than reliable. Historians still argue whether these staff members were mostly helpful protectors of your sandals or opportunistic part-timers in the redistribute cloaks side hustle. The sounds in the room ebb and flow around you. To your left, two men are debating whether it's better to exercise first and then bathe, or to go straight to the warm rooms and skip the palestra entirely. One swears by a proper workout. The other shrugs and points out that sweating in a hot room is its own kind of exercise. You quietly appreciate that ancient people were already arguing about the correct gym routine. Some things never change. To your right, a younger guy glances around nervously as he removes a small ring from his finger and tucks it deep into his folded tunic. You watch him, thinking that if I were a thief, that guy would absolutely be my target. But I am not a thief. I'm just a time-traveling observer who's mostly worried about remembering where my shoes are. One quirky tidbit you might enjoy. In some graffiti and comedic sketches from the ancient world, bathhouse changing rooms show up as places where people not only lose clothes, but also overhear ridiculous bragging. Someone claiming they know a famous person, someone insisting they have the best business plan in all of Rome. Think of this as the ancient locker room humble brag zone, just with fewer sports drinks and more olive oil. You stand, testing the grip of the floor under your bare feet. The stone is smooth, but not dangerously slick yet. Later, after hundreds of wet steps, it'll turn into a careful, sliding dance. For now, it simply feels cool and solid, intersecting with the warmth in the air in a way that makes your skin tingle. You adjust the simple cloth you've wrapped around your waist. Sometimes in places, men here are entirely nude, unbothered by it. In others, modesty layers creep in. Historians still argue whether there were strict norms about nudity by class and era, or whether it was more situational, depending on who you were and which bathhouse you chose. Tonight, the version you're visiting sits somewhere in the middle. Nobody cares too much as long as you're not making a scene. You glance back at your niche one more time. There's your cloak, a bit lumpy, your tunic, hopefully with no rings or coins peeking out, your sandals, toes pointing outward as if ready to walk themselves home without you. You mentally promise them that you will return. You absolutely will not walk out wearing someone else's smaller, flimsier pair and then spend the rest of the week with blisters. Probably. A small bell rings somewhere down the corridor leading onward, or maybe it's just a voice calling time, signaling that the exercise yard and cold room are officially open for the morning. A little ripple moves through the crowd as people stand, adjust towels, and start drifting toward the next spaces. The changing room empties slightly, leaving behind only the late arrivals and one man still rummaging around, muttering how he could have sworn he left his best belt here yesterday. You take a slow breath, feeling the shift inside yourself. On the street, you were layered in dust, fabric, and the role you play in the city. In here, you've peeled some of that away. You're lighter now, physically and mentally, moving closer to a place where you can let your shoulders drop, your lungs fill with warm, damp air, and your brain quietly shut off its constant to-do list. You step away from the bench and join the flow, heading toward the palestra, the open-air exercise courtyard. Behind you, the apoditarium continues its endless cycle. Clothes on, clothes off, sandals lost, sandals found, attendants hustling, people forgetting which niche is which and blaming the gods instead of their own memory. You smile to yourself as you walk. If the worst thing that happens to you today is that you temporarily misplace your sandals, you're doing pretty well, especially in a city where much, much stranger things are happening outside these walls. For the next part of your day, however, outside doesn't matter. You're on bathhouse time now, which runs slower, softer, and a little bit steamier than the clocks you're used to. And it all started with the simple act of taking your clothes off and hoping they're still there when you come back.
You follow the stream of half-wrapped, half-awake bathgoers down another corridor, and you can feel the air shift again. It becomes a little cooler, a little fresher, and suddenly less echoing. The warm, enclosed hum of the changing room begins to thin out, replaced by something more open. Up ahead, the light grows brighter, not the soft glow of oil lamps, but the clearer light of the sky. You step out into the palestra. It's an open-air courtyard, framed by colonnades on all sides. Tall columns hold up shaded walkways where people can stand and watch, talk, or lean against the cool stone. In the center, the ground is packed earth or sand, flattened and smoothed by countless feet. The air out here carries a different mix of smells: sweat, dust, faint olive oil, and that earthy, "we're officially not indoors anymore" scent. For a moment, you just stand there and take it in. This is the Roman version of a gym. If your gym had no treadmills, no blaring pop music, and everyone wore the same minimalist outfit. Men toss balls back and forth in rhythmic patterns, others stretch, a few grapple and wrestling practice,
Someone is doing what might be generously described as jogging, which looks suspiciously like walking slightly faster while pretending. You step off the stone and onto the sand. It gives under your bare feet, soft and forgiving. In a world without cushioned sneakers, this is the closest thing you're getting to a low-impact surface. You roll your shoulders, feeling a little self-conscious at first. You're not here to prove anything. You're here to loosen your body so the hot rooms later can melt you into a happy puddle. You start with the basics. A few stretches, slow and careful, arms up over your head, back arching just slightly, feeling the pull along your ribs. A gentle twist from side to side, listening to your spine make small, private comments. You rotate your neck, your ankles, your wrists. There's a comforting universality in this. People centuries before you warming up in roughly the same way, muscles waking up gradually instead of being thrown into surprise sprints. Mainstream historical fact time. Romans did actually use the baths for exercise as much as for washing. The palaestra was a standard feature of large bathhouses, a place for ball games, wrestling, running, and light strength work. You're supposed to move your body first and then reward it with all the water and steam. It's the ancient version of, no, seriously, you'll enjoy the sauna more after you lift something heavy. To your left, two men are locked in a wrestling match. Their bodies are slick with oil and sand, muscles tensing and relaxing in a slow, spiraling dance. They're not trying to hurt each other. This is sport, not combat, but there's still a stubborn determination in every grip. A small crowd watches from the edge of the courtyard, offering the occasional bit of advice that's only half helpful. Hook his leg. Don't let him get behind you. Remember what happened last time. You decide maybe the wrestling isn't for you today. You're here for a gentle core memory kind of workout, not wake up with bruises and a story. Instead, you drift toward a group playing a ball game. They stand in a loose circle, tossing a small stuffed ball in varied patterns, across, diagonally, sometimes straight up, just to see if anyone's paying attention. Some games focus on coordination, others on tricking each other. In a few, the goal seems to be accidentally bop your friend in the face and then swear it was part of the rules. A man with a friendly grin tosses the ball lightly in your direction. Without thinking too much, you catch it, feeling the weight. A little heavier than you expected, solid but not painful. You throw it back, your arm remembering motions from school sports and random living room games. For a few minutes, you fall into the rhythm. Catch, step, throw. Warmth spreads lazily through your shoulders and chest, not sharp or exhausting, just alive. One quirky tidbit: some Roman writers complained that certain ball games in the baths were played with such enthusiasm that people got smacked hard enough to need medical attention, and also that players would shout so loudly that it annoyed more peaceful bathgoers. Congratulations, you have just discovered the ancient equivalent of that one guy who grunts loudly at the gym. You take a break, walking toward the colonnade to stand briefly in the shade. From here, you can see the whole courtyard. People stretching, jogging, tussling, throwing, laughing. The sunlight grazes the tops of the columns, turning them a soft gold. The sky above is clearer now, the last traces of dawn haze disappearing into a pale, bright blue. You lean against a column and feel the cool stone against your back. Your breathing has picked up a little, but not much. This isn't a high-intensity workout session. It's more like telling your body, "Hey, we're awake now. Let's be friends today." Your muscles feel gently warmed, your mind a little clearer, as if the dust of sleep has been shaken off. A man next to you does a few squats, then glances over. "Hot room later?" he asks, casual. You nod. "I hear it's good today." He grins. "Depends who's complained already. If enough people say it's too hot, they'll let it cool. If enough say it's too cold, someone's going to be running more wood downstairs." You both share the quiet amusement of people who know that somewhere under your feet, overworked furnace crews are being blamed for every degree of discomfort. Historians still argue whether all social classes freely mixed in the palaestra and baths, or whether there were subtle zones and hours where richer, more powerful citizens clustered together. From where you stand, it's a blend. You see older men with expensive-looking rings alongside younger, plainer men whose tunics were clearly patched more than once. Out here, in the oil and dust, status blurs a bit. You step back into the sunlit center for one last round of movement. You jog a slow circle, nothing dramatic, just enough to feel your feet firm against the earth and the air moving in your lungs. You swing your arms lightly, shake out your hands, and let your gaze wander up to the sky. There's something calming in seeing that big, indifferent blue arch over a courtyard full of people who, like you, are just trying to get through their day without tripping over anything or anyone. As you wind down, you notice attendants setting out fresh oil near the exit leading back inside. The message is clear. Phase 1, wake up the body, is complete. Phase 2, start playing with water and temperature, is about to begin. You wipe a bit of sweat from your forehead with the back of your hand and start walking toward the doorway that leads back into the main complex. Your skin is warm now, lightly sticky, the perfect state to make you appreciate what comes next. As you cross the threshold, the air cools again, just a touch. The muted roar of the bathhouse wraps around you, splashing, echoing voices, the soft slap of wet feet on stone. Somewhere, someone laughs. Somewhere else, someone sneezes dramatically, earning a whole chorus of "May the gods keep you well" from the surrounding crowd. You glance back once at the palaestra, at the people still wrestling, running, and throwing. For them, the day will continue like this for a while longer. For you, the path is turning inward, to cooler water first, then warmth, then heat, and then that pleasantly boneless feeling you only get when you've gone through every stage and come out the other side. Your steps carry you forward, following the subtle slope of the floor and the faintly sharper scent of cold water ahead. You've woken your muscles. Now, it's time to shock them.
You follow the corridor as it bends inward again, away from the open sky and back into the stone heart of the building. The air changes first. It loses the dry dust of the palaestra and picks up a cooler, sharper edge. Your warmed skin notices it immediately. Tiny goosebumps rising along your arms, like your body has just read the weather report and is mildly offended. The light changes too. Instead of the bright, bleaching sunlight of the courtyard, you move under softer, filtered illumination. High windows let in pale slices of day, reflected and bent by stone and water, until everything looks faintly blue. Up ahead, you hear it, the quiet, steady sound of water lapping against stone. You step through an archway and into the frigidarium. The room is cool, but not unfriendly. The floor beneath your bare feet is smoother here, polished by centuries of damp footsteps. The walls carry painted panels, myths, sea creatures, stylized waves, or maybe just simple bands of color, depending on who paid for this place. Either way, the message is the same. Water is the main character. In the center lies the cold pool. It is a long rectangle of dark, clear water sunk into the floor, its surface rippling gently whenever someone moves. At one end, broad steps vanish into the depths, edges blurred by shifting reflections. At the other, fresh, cooler water feeds in, making faint currents that comb the whole basin. A handful of men linger round the edges, arms folded or hands on hips, clearly working up the courage to go in. A couple of braver souls are already in up to their shoulders, faces composed in that tight expression that says, "I am absolutely fine," while every muscle screams, "This was a choice." You pad closer, feeling the temperature drop the last few degrees. This isn't icily life or death cold. It's the kind of chill that makes your brain switch from cozy to extremely awake. Mainstream historical fact: Roman bath routines often included a cold dip in the frigidarium to close the pores, boost circulation, and harden the body. Whether that's medically accurate is up for debate, but Romans are firmly on team cold plunge. You sit on the edge and let your feet hover over the surface for a cowardly second. Then you dip one foot in. The shock bites instantly, racing up your leg. Not painful, just sudden, like your nerves all trying to file a complaint at once. You lower the other foot, get a second lightning jolt, and then your body adjusts. The water is cold, yes, but steady. It has no grudge against you. It's just doing its job. You slide forward and step down onto the submerged stair. Water climbs your calves, your knees, your thighs. Each new level sends another clean wave of chill through you, erasing the sweat and dust of the palestra. You grip the stone rail or the pool edge, feeling how smooth it is beneath your fingers, worn by countless other hesitant hands. One more step, and the pool reaches your chest. For a breath or two, your lungs forget how to behave. You drag in air sharply, shoulders lifting, eyes closing against the cold pressing around your ribs. Then little by little, your breathing evens out again. Your heart, briefly startled, settles into a deeper, calmer beat. The cold and your own warmth meet halfway. You push off gently, drifting away from the steps. Around you, other bathers conduct their own experiments in bravery. One stubborn man refuses to go in past his waist and loudly insists it's better for the knees this way. Another dunks himself completely under, exploding back up with a huge exhale and a look that says he's either refreshed or legally dead for 3 seconds. You choose the middle path. Shoulders in, hair mostly dry, dignity intact. A quirky tidbit nags at your memory. Some ancient writers mention people rubbing themselves with snow or very cold water as part of health rituals or simple showing off. There has clearly always been that one friend who thinks,
What if we suffered, but on purpose? You let yourself move slowly from one end of the pool to the other. The frigidarium is quieter than the changing room or the palestra. People talk here, but in lower tones, as if the cold compresses their voices. You catch fragments of conversation, grain shipments, a minor court case, a neighbor's endless barking dog. Ordinary worries wrapped in misty breath. You tilt your head back and look up. The ceiling above is higher, domed or vaulted, designed to catch echoes and scatter light. In some baths, tiny glass windows send pale beams down that dance on the water whenever someone moves. Historians still argue whether every frigidarium was a grand hall, or whether many were just plain, practical rooms with minimal decoration. Tonight, yours sits comfortably in between, dignified without trying too hard. You run your hands just under the surface, watching ripples roll outward in soft rings. It's strangely meditative. The cold keeps you anchored in your body. The repetitive motion lets your mind wander in a safe, fuzzy way. For a few minutes, there is nothing but you, the water, and the gentle slap of waves against stone. Under the initial shock, a different warmth begins to bloom. Your body has started generating heat to compensate. Your skin tingles, but not in a panicked way, more like a low, steady hum from inside your muscles. Somewhere deep down, your own private hypocast has decided to get involved. After a while, you angle back toward the steps. Climbing out is its own kind of ritual. The air, which felt cool before, now seems almost mild. Droplets of water run down your arms in chest, chilling in streaks as they go. You grab a towel or cloth from a nearby attendant and pat yourself down, not to get completely dry, just to stop the dripping. You stand for a moment at the edge, breathing. Your head feels clearer, thoughts smoothed out like silt at the bottom of a river. Your limbs feel lighter, as if someone quietly turned down the volume on all the little complaints your joints usually make. You did nothing particularly heroic. You just stood in cold water for a bit, and somehow that's enough. A man passing by nods at you. "Caldarium next?" he asks, already glistening with a layer of oil. You nod back. "Caldarium next," because that's the rhythm here. Move, chill, warm, hot, scrape, oil, maybe snack. The frigidarium has done its part, closing a door on the busy, dusty world and setting you up for the next stage. You give the pool one last look. Its surface has already forgotten you, smoothing over into an unbroken sheet of shifting blue-gray. Then you turn toward the corridor leading onward. The air there feels thicker, heavier with moisture, and a faint smell of heated stone and scented oil. Behind you, the cold room continues its quiet work, welcoming the next hesitant set of footsteps. You walk away on feet that feel more awake than they did an hour ago, heading toward the warmth that waits deeper inside the baths.
You leave the cold room behind with a kind of cautious dignity, like someone backing away from a polite but intense conversation. As you step into the corridor, the air feels thicker again, no longer sharp and bracing, but soft and slightly heavy.
Your skin, fresh from the frigidarium, notices every tiny change. A faint shiver runs through you, not from cold this time, but from the contrast, like your body is saying, "What exactly are we doing now?" You're heading toward the tepidarium. If the frigidarium is the shock, and the caldarium is the sauna, the tepidarium is the in-between, the lukewarm embrace. This is the room that doesn't want to surprise you. It wants to lull you. It wants to say, "Hey, let's all be in the same temperature and just not panic." You follow the bend of the hallway and step through another arch. The warmth greets you like a hand placed gently on your shoulders, not gripping, just resting there. The air is comfortably warm, neither hot enough to steal your breath nor cool enough to raise goosebumps. It feels like stepping into a room that's been holding on to yesterday's sunlight all afternoon. The tepidarium is smaller than some of the other spaces, but more intimate in its own way. The walls are lined with niches and shallow benches, some carved from stone, some covered with wooden platforms or even a bit of padding. The floor beneath you is warm, not aggressively so, just pleasantly, so your toes think, "Yes, this I approve of." A mainstream historical fact slides into place. In many large Roman bathhouses, the tepidarium functioned as a central transition room. People passed through it between hotter and colder spaces, letting their bodies adjust, warming up or cooling down gradually, rather than slamming from one extreme to the other. Think of it as the empire's official no dramatic temperature changes policy. You find a spot along one wall and sink slowly onto a bench. The stone is warm against your skin, radiating heat from the hypercost channels beneath. You can almost imagine it. Hot air from the furnaces flowing through hidden cavities under the floor and inside the walls, turning the entire room into a giant, gentle heating pad. Somewhere below, a worker shifts another load of wood, making this comfort possible without ever seeing your face. Your body responds almost immediately. Cold muscles from the plunge pool begin to loosen, the tightness along your shoulders fading into a soft, lingering tingle. The boundary between you and the room blurs slightly as the warmth seeps in, issuing a quiet invitation to stop holding yourself so tightly. A few other bathers share the space with you. To your left, two men recline with the casual confidence of people who have reserved this time of day for themselves and consider it non-negotiable. One talks about grain prices, the other about some disappointing theater performance. They speak in that lazy, half-interested way that suggests the point of the conversation is not the topic, but the act of talking in a warm room with nowhere else to be. To your right, a younger man sits with his eyes half closed, lips moving silently, as if rehearsing a speech in his head. Maybe he's a student, practicing lines for a case or declamation, turning arguments over in the same air that carries steam and gossip. You wonder how many bits of Roman law and rhetoric were silently drafted in rooms exactly like this, with their authors wrapped in towels and half asleep. A quirky little detail floats into your thoughts. Some sources suggest that wealthier Romans might spend long stretches of time in the tepidarium without doing much else. No wrestling, no extreme heat, no icy plunges, just lounging, chatting, and occasionally being oiled and scraped. For them, the bathhouse wasn't a workout or a health routine, so much as a pleasantly warm social club where nobody wore shoes. You lean back against the wall, feeling the heat through your shoulders. Moisture beads lightly on your skin, but you're not really sweating yet. This is more like being wrapped in air temperature bath water. Your breathing slows without you asking it to.
The rhythm of the room takes over. Inhale with the warm air. Exhale with the soft murmur of voices. Inhale with the faint scent of oil and damp stone. Exhale with other people's half-finished stories. From somewhere deeper in the building, you hear a distant, muffled splash, the louder, echoing crash of someone entering a hotter pool. The sound arrives softened by walls and arches, like thunder heard from very far away. Historians still argue whether every bather followed a strict sequence: exercise, tepidarium, hot room, scrape, cold plunge, or whether actual practice was more flexible and personal, with people drifting between rooms according to habit and mood. In your case, the path is more emotional than scientific. You go where the air feels right and where your mind can sink a little deeper into stillness. Across from you, an older man is being gently rubbed with oil by an attendant. The slave's hands move with practiced care, spreading olive oil across the man's shoulders, arms, and back. The oil gleams slightly in the warm light, catching highlights along the curve of muscles softened by age but not given up on. Soon a strigil will follow, scraping away oil, sweat, and dust. For now, it's just contact and warmth and the quiet hum of a body being taken seriously. You watch without really staring, and then let your gaze drift upwards. The ceiling above you may be painted, faded gods, curling vines, simple patterns, or it may be plain plaster, slightly cracked from years of heat and moisture. Either way, it gives your eyes something to rest on as your thoughts start to wander in less linear ways. You notice your own mind doing that gentle unhooking thing it does when you're almost asleep, but not quite. One moment, you're thinking about the furnaces below, how much wood they must burn in a day. Then you're wondering whether your cloak is still in its niche. Then you're thinking about the sound of the frigidarium, the splash of that man who went in way too dramatically. Then that thought dissolves into nothing, just warmth and breathing and the faint drumming of your own heartbeat in your ears. The tepidarium is good at this. It doesn't demand anything from you. The frigidarium asked for courage. The coldarium will ask for endurance. The palestra wanted movement. But this room just wants you to sit here and let your body remember what it feels like not to be braced for the next thing. A man near the doorway cracks a small joke about someone's dramatic gasp from the cold pool. Laughter ripples through the room on a low, comfortable wave. Nobody is trying to be particularly funny. Everyone is just a little softer around the edges, and humor comes easily when your muscles have stopped yelling at you. You smile without really deciding to. If you listen closely, you can hear tiny things: the faint drip of condensed moisture somewhere high above, the quiet scuff of a foot adjusting position on the warm floor, the whispered "sorry" as someone tries to squeeze past without bumping knees. It's like the whole room is tuned down to a lower volume, and every sound is cushioned in steam. Eventually, you shift your weight and sit up a little straighter. You could stay here for hours and be perfectly content. But the bathhouse has more temperatures to offer, and there's a sequence to this slow unraveling of tension. The warmth of the tepidarium has done its job. Your muscles are pliable now, your mind drifting pleasantly, and your skin ready for the deeper heat to come. You swing your feet down onto the floor, feeling the warmth once more under your soles. As you stand, the room seems to sway very slightly, not because it actually moves, but because your body is floating somewhere between fully awake and comfortably drowsy. You adjust your towel, nod a small farewell to no one in particular, and walk toward the doorway. Behind you, the tepidarium continues its quiet work, receiving new arrivals from the cold and releasing others toward the hot, smoothing the edges of every transition. Ahead of you, you can already taste a different kind of air, thicker, hotter,
filled with real steam, the kind that coats your lungs and makes each breath feel like you're sipping from an invisible bath. You take one more easy breath of the lukewarm room, like a last calm step on the shore. Then you turn and walk toward the caldarium, ready to let the heat do what heat does best, melt the rest of your day away.
The doorway to the caldarium feels different even before you step through it. Standing just outside, you could already see the air inside shimmering slightly, the way pavement does on a hot day. The stone around the arch is warmer under your fingertips, subtly telling you, if you go in there, you're committed. Your body, which has just learned to adore the gentle warmth of the tepidarium, is a little suspicious. You inhale once more in the mild corridor, then step forward. The heat greets you like a wall, but a soft one, padded with steam. It doesn't punch you in the face, it presses, slowly, insistently, wrapping around your shoulders, your chest, your throat. You take a breath and feel the warmth slide all the way down into your lungs, as if you've just sipped from a cup of very hot, very invisible tea. The caldarium is a more enclosed space than the other rooms. The ceiling rises above you in a dome or a high vault, curved so that condensation can gather and drip in slow, patient drops instead of pouring straight down. The walls and floor are all about holding heat. Thick stone, tiles, maybe even marble if this is a particularly fancy complex. Light filters in through small, high windows or a round opening in the ceiling, turning the steam into pale, swirling ribbons. You can feel the floor under your feet, warmer than anywhere you've stepped so far. The hypocaust is doing serious work here. Hot air snakes under the floor, around supporting pillars of tiles, then climbs up through hollow spaces in the walls. You are basically standing inside a carefully controlled brick oven that has been repurposed for the noble cause of turning humans into pleasantly poached dumplings. A large, hot water basin sits along one side of the room, steam curling up from its surface. This is the alveus, the place you'll eventually ease into if your courage holds. Closer to the center stands a raised basin, the labrum, filled with cooler water, ready for splashing over overheated faces and chests. It's the ancient refresh button, and you will absolutely be pressing it. You move inward slowly, like someone approaching a very lazy volcano. Each step deeper into the room thickens the heat around you. Your pores, which just recovered from the cold plunge, collectively sigh and give up. A slick sheen of moisture appears on your skin almost immediately, not quite sweat yet, more like your body realizing resistance is futile. You find a spot on a low, heated bench and sit. The stone beneath you is hot, but not scalding, the kind of warmth that makes your muscles melt, but also whispers, "Don't stay here forever unless you want to fuse with the architecture." You lean back against the wall, feeling the heat soak into your spine, your shoulders, the back of your skull. A mainstream historical fact drifts in with the steam. For many Romans, the caldarium was the center of the bathing experience. It was where they believed they could sweat out impurities, relieve aches, and balance their humors. Doctors of the time recommended hot baths for cures from everything from stiffness to sadness, though to be fair, sitting in a hot room doing nothing probably does help with both. Around you, other bathers have staked out their preferred microclimates. One man sits right by the hot water basin, clearly in the "if I don't suffer, is it even a bath" camp. His skin already glows with an alarming redness that suggests he has not heard of moderation. Another has claimed a spot closer to the door, where the air is still hot but less intense. You decide to begin somewhere in the middle because you enjoy being able to breathe.
The soundscape in the caldarium is different too. Voices come softer, not because anyone is trying to be quiet, but because full-volume conversation feels like too much effort in this heat. You hear murmurs, a few low laughs, the soft splash of water being poured from small ladles onto shoulders, arms, heads. Every now and then, a droplet of condensation lets go from the ceiling and lands somewhere with a delicate pat. Your own body starts its slow surrender. Sweat beads along your hairline, trickles down the back of your neck, gathers in the hollow of your throat. Your muscles, already relaxed from the tepidarium, let go another layer of tightness. Your joints feel strangely lighter, as if the heat has turned the rust in them into mist. You take deeper breaths, not because you need to, but because it feels good to fill your lungs with this warm, thick air. A man nearby leans over the labrum and splashes cool water on his face with a quiet gasp. You watch a few droplets scatter, catching the light like miniature comets before they vanish into the steam. Without thinking too hard about it, you stand and move toward the basin yourself. The stone rim is cool compared to the rest of the room, as if the water inside is keeping it grounded. You dip your hands in and lift a handful to your face. The contrast is delicious. Cool water against overheated skin, a tiny shock that doesn't undo the warmth but sharpens your sense of it. For a moment, the whole world narrows to that simple sensation: heat, coolness, breath. Everything else, wood gathering downstairs, stolen sandals, arguments about grain prices, fades out. You catch yourself smiling, not at anything in particular, just at the feeling of being thoroughly, pointlessly, wonderfully here. A quirky tidbit surfaces. There are jokes and anecdotes about people spending so long in the hot and warm rooms that they practically lived there, only to emerge to attend banquets or business. Some even had servants bring them food and drink inside. Imagine being so committed to the bathhouse life that you're basically a very clean cave goblin with a snack budget. You ease yourself toward the hot water basin. A set of steps disappear into the steaming water, edges blurred. You test the surface with your toes, and your brain supplies an immediate, "Wow, okay. This is not tea. This is, we boiled a small lake." Still, you've already survived the frigidarium. Your pride has been engaged. You take the first step down. Heat wraps around your feet, then your ankles, climbing slowly as you descend. It's a different kind of intensity from the cold. There's no sudden shock, no instinctive flinch. Instead, there's a gradual, encompassing insistence. Your body pushes back for a second, heart speeding up, lungs taking shorter breaths, then adapts like it always does. Soon, you're seated on the submerged step, water up to your chest, the room's steam and the basin's heat blending into one. Sweat and bathwater merge on your skin until you can't tell which is which. Your muscles slip further into that boneless, pleasant heaviness that means you will absolutely struggle to stand up later. You lean your head back against the hot stone bank, eyes half closed, and just float. Historians still argue whether the caldarium was universally enjoyed or quietly dreaded by more delicate bathers. Some descriptions make it sound like heaven, others like a challenge you only pretend to love so your friends don't call you weak. From where you're sitting, it's both. You're comfortable, but you're also definitely keeping track of how long you've been here. Time gets weird in the heat. You could swear you've only been soaking for a few minutes, and yet your sense of self has dissolved enough that you might have been here all afternoon. The sound of other people entering or leaving the basin washes over you like waves. A soft complaint here, a chuckle there. The occasional, "By the gods, that's hot," hissed through teeth. You remember vaguely that there is still more to the bath routine. Oil, scraping, massages, maybe a snack break. For now, though, all of that lies in the fuzzy, later part of your brain. Right now, your world is water, warmth, and the slow, steady beat of your heart echoing in your ears. You lift one hand out of the pool and watch drops slide down your fingers, bright against your overheated skin. For a moment, you let yourself imagine the machinery beneath you, the roaring hypocaust, the men feeding it, the channels and pipes and boilers making this small, luxurious moment possible. On the street, you are just another person in a big, complicated city. In this basin, for a few heartbeats, you are a small, contented planet orbiting a very hot sun. Eventually, your body gives you that quiet, serious nudge. Enough. You draw in a slightly deeper breath, open your eyes fully, and shift your weight forward. The water clings to you as you stand, reluctant to let you go. You climb the steps, feeling the cooler air above the basin touch your wet skin with what now counts as refreshing. You pause by the labrum again for one more splash across your face, then step away, beads of water tracing slow paths down your arms and chest.
Behind you, the caldarium continues to pulse with heat and breath and low conversations. Ahead of you, another doorway waits, where attendants with flasks of oil and curved strigils are ready to transform all this sweat and steam into something cleaner, smoother, and stranger than any shower you're used to. You take a careful breath, savoring the last deep warmth of the caldarium, and move on.
By the time you step out of the caldarium, you feel like a very polite noodle. Your muscles are loose, your joints are quiet, and your brain has downgraded all thoughts to maybe later. The air in the corridor feels almost cool now, not because it's actually cold, but because you've just been gently simmered like soup stock. Droplets cling to your skin, sliding slowly down, picking up little dusty memories from your day and carrying them toward the floor. Which is exactly why the next part exists. Because right now, under that thin layer of moisture, you're a complicated mix of sweat, dust, old oil, and whatever the caldarium walls have been exhaling for months. You feel relaxed, yes. You are not yet precisely clean. You follow the curve of the hallway toward a lighter, more open space. The sounds change as you walk. Less splash, more soft scraping, more low murmurs of conversation mingled with the faint slosh of oil in flasks. The smell shifts too, still warm and humid, but now threaded with the richer, smoother scent of olive oil and herbs. It's like walking from a steam room into the spa treatments section, if your spa treatments were administered by people who have never heard of eucalyptus playlists, but definitely know their way around a curved piece of metal. You've reached the unctio area, the oiling and scraping zone. It's not a single distinct room in every bathhouse. Sometimes it's a dedicated space, other times a side area off the warm rooms. Here, it opens out into a chamber with benches and low platforms, arranged so attendants can move easily around each person. The floor is slightly tackier underfoot, not from anything gross, but from years of oil mist and tiny spills sinking into every surface. Attendants move through the space like bees in a hive. Most are slaves or poor freemen, their tunics short, their sleeves rolled up, hands already slick with oil. They carry small flasks at their belts, ceramic, glass, or metal, each filled with something thicker and more fragrant than the plain kitchen type. The air is full of soft clinks and muted squelches as oil is poured, rubbed, and massaged. You find an open spot on a bench and sit. Immediately, a young attendant approaches, head tilted in a question he doesn't need to voice. You nod, and he sets his flask on a small ledge nearby, the container catching a glint of light. Up close, you can smell the contents. Base olive oil, softened with something faintly herbal, maybe myrtle or rosemary. Nothing overpowering, just enough to make hot person smell and salad dressing different categories. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Romans often cleaned themselves with oil instead of soap. They'd rub oil over the skin and then remove it, with sweat, dust, and grime attached, using a tool called a strigil. Archaeologists have found strigils all over the Roman world, made of bronze, iron, even silver for the very fancy, curved like flattened question marks, perfectly shaped to hug the line of a limb. The attendant warms a little oil between his hands and then starts spreading it over your shoulders. His touch is firm but not aggressive, more practical than pampering. He moves with the confidence of someone who's done this 1,000 times and knows exactly where tense muscles hide. Oil glides easily across your skin, filling the tiny valleys and ridges, loosening whatever the heat didn't quite reach. You feel it sink into your arms, your back, the top of your chest, turning every inch into a slightly shinier version of yourself. It's a strange sensation, part massage, part preparation. Your body enjoys it immediately. Your brain, slightly slower on the uptake, realizes there's something undeniably vulnerable about sitting here, slick and soft, while another person methodically coats you like a pot being seasoned. But the room's atmosphere makes it ordinary. Around you, other people are undergoing the same process, chatting idly through it or drifting into silence. To your left, an older man jokes that with this much oil, he could probably slide from the caldarium all the way to the front door if he angled himself correctly. His attendant just shakes his head, lips twitching, as if he's seen someone try something similar and knows it ends with, "And that's how you broke your elbow." Once your upper body is well oiled, the attendant reaches toward his belt. He pulls out the strigil. It's a slender, curved strip of metal, thicker where he holds it, flattening and bending into a smooth arc at the end. The edge isn't sharp like a knife. It's more like the lip of a firm spoon. Still, your skin instinctively catalogs it under things to pay attention to. "Ready?" his expression seems to ask. You nod. He starts at your shoulder, setting the strigil against your oiled skin and drawing it down in a long, steady stroke. The sensation is oddly wonderful. There's just enough pressure to make you aware of every inch of contact, but not enough to hurt. The metal glides, guided by the oil, gathering a thin film of sweat, dust, and used-up oil as it goes. It leaves behind skin that feels strangely lighter, as if he scraped away a layer of tiredness you didn't know was there. He repeats the motion, down the arm, along the back, across the chest. Each pass produces a tiny line of cloudy residue on the edge of the strigil, which he wipes away on a cloth or the side of a shallow basin. You try not to think too hard about what's in that mixture. Just know that whatever it is, you're glad it's not still sitting on you. Here comes a particularly quirky tidbit. Ancient sources say the mixture of oil, sweat, and grime called gloius, scraped from the bodies of gladiators, was actually sold as a kind of weird health product. People believed it had medicinal or even aphrodisiac properties. Yes, someone in Rome paid good money for bottled gladiator scrape. You, fortunately, are not obliged to purchase your own bath leavings as a souvenir. The attendant moves methodically, down your other arm, along your back, the long strokes following the lines of your muscles, across your sides where ribs shift gently under the pressure, over your legs from thigh to calf, making your skin feel brand new and just a little bit smug. Every now and then, he pauses to let you adjust your position. You lean forward, then back, lift an arm, angle a shoulder. It's a quiet choreography between you and the strigil, all about angles and arcs. Around you, the soft scrape, scrape, scrape of metal on oiled skin becomes a kind of rhythm. Voices thread through it. A man near you is telling his neighbor about a strange dream he had, something about being chased by angry geese wearing laurel wreaths. You don't catch the whole story, but you file away Goose Caesar as something your brain will absolutely revisit at 3 a.m. Somewhere else, two men gently argue about which bath in the city has the best attendance. One insists that another complex has stronger massage. The other counters that this place has better oil and more interesting conversation. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were more important as hygiene centers, social clubs, or networking hubs, but from the tone in this room, free gossip and minor bragging is definitely high on the list. The strigil makes another long, clean pass down your spine. By the time the attendant finishes, your skin feels different. Not scented or perfumed in some dramatic way, just deeply, quietly refreshed. The earlier stickiness from sweat and steam is gone, replaced with a faint, even softness. You feel both lighter and more solid, like someone has carefully polished you and put you back where you belong. He wipes the strigil one last time, then steps back with a small nod.
You return it with a quiet thank you, even if your Latin is more vibes than vocabulary. He's already moving on to the next client. Oil flask glinting, metal curve ready to repeat its work. This is his whole day. Scrape, wipe, move. Scrape, wipe, move. Somewhere deep in his muscles, your shape is now stored as one more set of remembered angles and lengths in a long list of strangers. You sit for a moment longer, feeling the air move over your freshly scraped skin. The humidity no longer clings in the same way. Instead, it feels like a light shawl draped over you, not a heavy blanket. If you shift, the bench is warm and smooth beneath you, supportive but unobtrusive, like the hypocaust itself, a hidden presence making your comfort possible. You stand up slowly, testing your new surface. Walking feels slightly different when every part of your skin is freshly buffed. The small tug of towel against hip, the flex of calf, the roll of shoulder, all of it feels more precise, like someone turned up the resolution on your body. You're still you, but you feel like a cleaner version, in a very literal, very old-fashioned sense. Ahead, another corridor opens up, this one leading toward quieter spaces, massage tables, barber stools, corners where people sit and let their vanity catch up to their hygiene. Behind you, the oiling and scraping continues, the gentle chorus of strigils making their slow, repetitive music. You take a breath, appreciating the simple miracle that you have just been thoroughly cleaned without a single bar of soap in sight. Then you start walking again, glowing just a little, not just from the heat, but from the small, strange satisfaction of having your entire upper layer of today gracefully scraped away.
Freshly scraped and lightly oiled, you walk like someone who's just been upgraded from dusty mortal to limited edition human. The corridor ahead feels softer now. The air is still warm, but it's no longer the enveloping heat of the caldarium or the thick humidity of the scraping area. It's calmer, gentler, like the bathhouse is slowly dialing you back toward normal life, but not quite yet. There are still a few rituals between you and the door. You follow the sound of low conversation and the faint snipping rhythm of metal on hair. The next space opens into a room that feels oddly familiar, even across time. Benches line the walls. Small stools sit in the middle, and along one side, a row of men stand or sit while another group fusses around them with combs, razors, and towels. You've found the grooming zone. Massages, barbers, and beauty rituals. Roman edition. The smell hits you first. A mix of clean skin, leftover oil, a hint of wine breath, and the faint, sharp tang of whatever passes for shaving cream in a world without pressurized cans. There are also undertones of burnt hair from some of the more aggressive depilation methods. It's not a candle shop, but it's not exactly unpleasant. It smells like effort. An attendant catches your eye and tilts his head toward an open spot on a low couch. You accept the invite. Your legs are already halfway to jelly. A massage sounds like the kind of bad idea that is secretly a very good idea. You settle yourself belly down or on your side, depending on how much you trust your ability not to snore. The surface is firm, but padded just enough that your bones don't complain. A pair of hands, strong, warm, lightly oiled, rests on your shoulders. For a heartbeat, everything in your body goes quiet, as if it's waiting to see what will happen. Then the hands press, thumbs sliding along either side of your spine, working their way into all the small knots that life in a noisy, crowded city kindly gifts you for free. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Roman sources do mention massages as part of the bathing routine. Wealthier citizens sometimes had personal masseurs, others used the bathhouse staff. The goal wasn't just relaxation, but health, loosening muscles, improving circulation, and getting the body ready for whatever came next, whether that was a banquet or a decent night's sleep. Those thumbs find a tense muscle near your shoulder blade and lean in with terrifying accuracy. You make a sound that is somewhere between a sigh and a quiet, startled yelp. The masseur's hands pause for a second, checking that you're okay, and then continue with a tiny adjustment in pressure that says, "I know that hurt. It's going to hurt less now." He works along your neck, down your back, across your shoulders, behind your arms. Each movement is practical, unhurried, and strangely respectful. You are not being pampered in a modern spa sense, you're being maintained, like an expensive tool that's still expected to work hard tomorrow. Around you, other people are deep in their own maintenance routines. To your left, someone is getting a brisk leg rub, the attendant's hands moving so quickly you half expect smoke to rise. To your right, a man sits upright while a barber, tonsor, leans in with a razor in hand, scraping careful lines along his jaw. The scraping sound of metal on stubble adds a faint percussion to the murmured voices in the room. One quirky tidbit: Roman barbers were kind of a big deal. Barbershops in the city doubled as gossip hubs, where people went not just for haircuts and shaves, but for news, jokes, and the occasional insult disguised as friendly banter.
Combining that with the bathhouse, you've basically discovered the ancient world's ultimate package deal. Get clean, get rubbed, get roasted. Your masseur moves down to your lower back and hips, thumbs and palms sweeping in slow arcs. Your body is officially done resisting. Your muscles melt under each stroke, sinews untying themselves in a way that makes you wonder whether you've ever actually relaxed before. You feel your breathing deepen, your face softening, even though no one is touching it. Eventually, the pressure lightens, the hands trailing off in a few last smoothing passes. You ease upright slowly, as if gravity has become optional and you're only following it as a suggestion. The masseur gives you a small nod and steps away to help the next client. You sit there for a moment, letting your joints rearrange themselves into sitting human mode instead of content puddle. A barber catches your eye. He holds up a simple bronze mirror so you can see yourself, hair a little wild from the rooms, stubble or shadow along your jaw, depending on your natural rate of beard drama. His look asks a simple question. While you're here? Why not? You shift to one of the stools facing a low table. The barber drapes a cloth around your shoulders to catch stray hairs, then picks up a comb. He works through your hair with quick, practiced motions, untangling curls or smoothing waves, depending on what nature has given you. Shorter, he might ask, or maybe just touches a bit near your neck and raises his eyebrows. You give him a small nod. He takes up a pair of shears and starts snipping. Locks fall in gentle arcs, landing on the cloth or the floor. The room fills with soft, irregular punctuation. Snip, scrape, snip, murmur, laugh. You watch yourself in the slightly warped bronze, your reflection flickering in the dim light, looking more relaxed than any version of you has in weeks. Historians still argue whether most Roman men kept clean-shaven faces at all times or let fashion cycles of beards and mustaches come and go, following imperial trends. Here in the baths, though, you're seeing both. Some men's faces gleam with fresh shaves, others wear neat, trimmed beards that say, "This is on purpose, I swear." If you opt for a shave, the barber dips his razor in water, maybe mixes a bit of oil or soft soap, and then holds your chin with a confidence that's either comforting or terrifying. The blade strokes your skin with careful scraping whispers, taking away stubble and any lingering doubt you had about how much you trust this stranger. You hold still, eyes half-lidded, breathing steady. When he's done, he wipes your face with a damp cloth, then a dry one, then applies a little oil, more for soothing than for shine. Your skin tingles in a way that's half nerves, half tiny victory. You have survived a metal blade near your throat in a world without antiseptic. Go you. Nearby, a different kind of beauty ritual is underway. An attendant is plucking stray hairs from a man's shoulders with tweezers, while another uses a bit of rough pumice on someone's heels. Smooth skin is not just a modern obsession. Plenty of Romans, especially in higher social circles, disliked visible body hair and roughness. There are recipes in ancient texts involving pitch, resin, and other cheery substances for ripping hair out of the roots. You silently thank the universe that you only had to survive a razor and not a DIY wax with tree sap. One man, clearly proud of his carefully shaped beard, argues amiably with another who insists true elegance is a clean-shaven jaw. They gesture at statues and busts of famous men as visual aids, using marble faces as evidence. The debate is endless and charming, and not really about hair at all. It's about identity, class, age, and how people want to be seen in a world where mirrors are rare and reflective pools are usually full of other people's feet. You glance back at your own reflection once more. Your hair is neater, your face smoother or more intentionally scruffy. Your skin has that post-scraping glow. You do in fact look like someone who spends at least part of their life in a civilization that has figured out hot water, central heating, and personal grooming. You stand, letting the cloth fall away in a small shower of hair clippings. The barber gives a little satisfied nod, the universal sign for, not my best work ever, but solid. You thank him with a coin, or at least a grateful expression, depending on how generous your imaginary budget is today. The room hums on around you, massages continuing, razors gliding, conversations weaving in and out. It's a place where bodies are tuned up, egos are gently polished, and small vanities are indulged without much fuss. Nothing here is absolutely necessary for survival, and yet, somehow all of it feels vital to being fully, comfortably human. As you step back toward the corridor, a new smell joins the mix. Food. Somewhere nearby, beyond the grooming rooms and warm halls, someone is frying or steaming something, and your freshly relaxed body suddenly remembers that it runs on more than just hot water and sarcasm. Your stomach makes a quiet, hopeful sound. The bathhouse has spent the morning taking things away from you. Dust, tension, grime, and stubble. Now it's time for it to give something back. You follow the trail of savory air and faint clatter.
Bowls, cups, voices calling orders. Ahead lies the thermopolium stall, where you can trade a few coins for bread, olives, maybe a bit of cheese or a warm snack, and of course, another layer of conversation to soak in. You take one last look back at the grooming room, at the barbers, the masseurs, the men fussing over hairlines and shoulder knots, then turn your face toward the promise of food and the next slow, soothing phase of your bathhouse day. The scent catches you first. Before you see stalls, before you hear the clink of cups, it slips down the corridor like a friendly ghost. Warm bread, sharp vinegar, briny olives, something frying in oil that your stomach identifies as, yes, that immediately. For all Rome's grandeur, its arches, its aqueducts, its marble, the thing that grabs you most right now is the smell of lunch. You follow it. The corridor opens onto a small side court, just off the main bath complex. It's not huge, but it's busy in that unhurried way that means no one here is going anywhere important anytime soon. A few stone counters are set up along the walls, thermopolium stalls, essentially, ancient snack bars. Big jars, or dolia, are sunk into the counters, their wide mouths open to show off what's inside. Stews, pulses, wine mixes, sauces, bits of who knows what, simmered into something comforting. People stand or perch nearby with cups and small plates. Some are wrapped in towels, others have thrown on light tunics over damp skin, as if the difference between bath mode and street mode is just one thin layer of fabric and a vague intention. You drift toward an open spot at one of the counters. The man behind it looks like a person who has spent his life inhaling steam. His hair is a little wild from the heat, his apron faintly stained with the colors of sauces long vanished. He holds a ladle in one hand and a cup in the other, multitasking with the calm efficiency of someone who has heard every possible request and complaint. He greets you with a nod that says, without words, "Hungry?" Your stomach answers before you do. You glance down at the jars embedded in the counter. In one, you see a thick barley stew, dotted with bits of vegetables and what might be sausage, or might be something the stall owner prefers not to describe too clearly. In another, a lighter offering, lentils, onions, herbs, all floating in a warm, savory broth. A third jar holds wine mixed with water,
and maybe a little honey, the surface catching the light in dull reds. Mainstream historical fact time. Thermopolia like this were common in Roman cities, especially for people who didn't cook at home every day. Archaeologists in places like Pompeii have uncovered stalls with dolia still in place, some even with traces of food at the bottom. Think of them as ancient takeout counters, minus the plastic lids and regretful delivery fees. You choose something simple: a piece of bread, a small bowl of lentils, maybe a few olives on the side. The vendor moves with practiced speed, cutting bread from a loaf, ladling your stew into a small dish, dropping olives onto a rough plate. The bread is dense and slightly rough, the kind that needs a bit of tearing and dipping to really shine. The lentils steam gently, sending up a smell that's earthy and warm, with a hint of garlic or herbs. The olives glisten in oil, firm and dark. You pay with a coin that feels very well spent. You find a spot along a low wall and sit, balancing bowl and bread in your hands. Your legs are still a little loose from the massage, your skin still tingling from the strigil, and now your stomach is ready to join the "we're being taken care of today" club. You dip the bread into the stew and take your first bite. It's not fancy. It's not something that will make it into history books, but it's good, solid, flavorful, the kind of food that feels honest. Your body recognizes it immediately and starts doing that quiet, grateful hum that happens when you feed it something warm after hours of heat and water.
Around you, the court is full of low-key life. A pair of men argue mildly about a legal case, gesturing with pieces of bread that occasionally flick crumbs at each other. Nearby, a group of younger guys laugh around a single shared cup of cheap wine, clearly more interested in the story being told than the drink itself. One man at the far end sits alone, eyes half closed, chewing slowly like every bite requires full philosophical consideration. A quirky little tidbit slides into your awareness. Some thermopolia probably doubled as low-rent taverns, places where you could get not just food, but stronger drinks and maybe a little trouble. That meant bathhouse-adjacent stalls were a convenient spot for people to glide from relaxed to slightly too relaxed without ever leaving the block. You take another spoonful of lentils, letting the texture roll over your tongue. It's amazing how quickly the rhythm of your day has become its own little world. Warm room, hot room, oil, scrape, snack. Out there, somewhere beyond the bathhouse walls, people are shouting in the forum, bargaining in markets, hauling goods across town. In here, your priorities are don't spill, don't burn your tongue, and maybe don't eavesdrop too obviously on the conversation next to you. Historians still argue whether every level of society rubbed shoulders equally in these snack spaces, or whether invisible lines kept the wealthier and poorer patrons semi-separated. Looking around your imaginary scene, you see at least some mixing. Different qualities of fabric, varying confidence in posture, different ways of holding a cup. The bathhouse blurs status lines, but doesn't erase them completely. An older man settles beside you with his own meal. He eyes your bowl with a critical squint, then nods approvingly. "Good choice," he says. "The fish stew is for people who angered the gods." You can't tell if he's joking. You don't need to find out. You enjoy your lentils in peace. He talks a little about the harvest, about his nephew who wants to go off and be some sort of philosopher, about the price of olive oil these days. It's not particularly dramatic, it's just the texture of everyday worry and mild amusement. You answer when it feels natural, but mostly you let his words wash over you like background music. Your attention drifts to the vendor again. He's refilling bowls, wiping the counter, shouting over his shoulder for someone in the back to bring more bread. Now and then he tastes his own stew, adjusting it with a pinch of salt or herbs scooped from a small dish. His work is the opposite of the hypocaust. Upstairs, you barely think about how the heat arrives. Here, you barely think about how the flavors come together. You just feel grateful when they do. A boy swings by with a tray of cups, collecting empties and trading them for new ones. Someone tries to haggle over the price of an extra olive. The vendor rolls his eyes and relents with the long-suffering patience of a man who has heard every variation of "but I'm practically family" from people who are absolutely not family. You finish the last of your stew, using the remaining bread to mop up the bottom of the bowl. Your stomach is comfortably full now, not the heavy fullness of a feast, just the steady satisfaction of having given your body fuel to match all the pampering. You feel grounded again, more present in your own skin, less like you're going to dissolve into the steam at any moment. You lick a stray smudge of oil from your thumb and set the empty bowl aside on the collection tray. For a brief moment, you let yourself just sit there, doing nothing at all. No talking, no eating, no moving. You listen to the clink of pottery, the murmur of voices, the distant echo of splashing water from the inner rooms. The bathhouse has become its own small city in your mind, complete with neighborhoods, the hot district, the cold district, the snack district. You visited most of them now, each with its own climate and customs. Eventually, the thought of the warm rooms calls you back. There are still conversations to overhear, quiet corners to rest in, social currents to drift through like a leaf on a slow-moving river. You stand up with a small, contented sigh, stretch lightly, and give the vendor a nod of thanks as you pass. He raises a hand in acknowledgement, already turning to answer someone else calling his name. You step back into the corridor, the smell of food slowly giving way once more to the familiar mix of stone, water, and faint perfume. Behind you, the thermopolium stall keeps feeding the stream of damp, relaxed citizens who wander in and out, turning bathing into a full-day experience. Ahead, the bathhouse opens again, and with a full stomach and a softened body, you're ready to slip back into its warmth, this time not just for water and heat, but for the strangely gentle storm of politics, old grudges, and accidental reunions waiting in the next rooms.
You slip back into the warm heart of the bathhouse with a full stomach and a body that has officially run out of reasons to be tense. The corridor welcomes you like an old friend. Familiar warmth along the walls, that soft, damp air that smells faintly of stone, oil, and the ghost of 10,000 conversations. You've done the cold, the warm, the hot, the scraping, the grooming, the snacking. At this point, you're not just clean, you're curated. Now it's time to drift through the part of the day where everyone pretends they're not doing politics.
You follow the flow into one of the larger central halls again. Not the hottest, not the coldest, but one of those in-between rooms where temperatures and tensions are both mild. Pools glimmer under high ceilings. Benches curve around the edges. The sound here is different from earlier. A deeper, richer hum of voices, layered like the ripples on the water. If the bathhouse were a play, this would be the scene where the side characters suddenly reveal they're very important. You wade into a shallow, pleasantly warm pool and settle yourself along one of the broad stone steps, water lapping lazily at your chest. The temperature is Goldilocks level perfect now. Warm enough that you don't want to leave, cool enough that your brain can still form more than 3 coherent thoughts. It doesn't take long for you to notice the invisible seating chart. Closer to one end of the room, a small cluster of men sits just slightly apart from the rest, bodies at ease but eyes very sharp. Their towels are a little finer, their jewelry a little heavier. One man talks while the others listen with that particular stillness that says, "I will pretend I don't care, but I definitely care." You don't need someone to announce it. You're looking at men with real influence. Magistrates, ex-officials, maybe even senators taking their daily soak. Mainstream historical fact: Roman baths weren't just for cleaning. They were hubs of social and political life. Deals were made, alliances whispered about, favors traded, all with bare shoulders and damp hair. It's hard to maintain too much mystique when the person you're negotiating with has water dripping off their ear. Closer to you, a pair of shopkeepers argue quietly about a delivery of grain that arrived late. And then he tells me that the cart broke a wheel. Again, it is always the wheel. What do you expect? If the gods wanted carts to arrive on time, they would have invented better roads. You smirk to yourself. At least some Roman small talk is just gently roasted logistics. You lean back against the edge of the pool, letting the voices become a background murmur. The water carries sound in strange ways. A whisper across the basin can arrive in your ear almost as clearly as the man next to you muttering about taxes. Somewhere off to your right, someone laughs loudly at a joke you didn't hear. The laughter reaches you first as vibration in the water, then as sound in the air. Nearby, 2 men suddenly pretend they haven't seen each other. You don't know their story, but it's clear they have one. They enter the room from opposite sides, glance up, freeze for half a heartbeat, and then both engage in the most transparent, "I am very interested in this wall" performance you've ever seen. One sits in the pool, the other on a bench, both angled just slightly away from each other, as if the steam itself might be fooled. A few curious eyes flick between them. No one says anything. That's the thing about the baths: public privacy. Everyone sees everything. Everyone politely pretends they didn't. Historians still argue whether the bathhouse truly leveled social distinctions or simply reshuffled them. On one hand, you literally share water with people far above or below your rank. On the other, subtle signals, where you sit, who you talk to, what oils you use, can recreate the same hierarchies in towel form. As you watch, a middle-aged man with the air of a professional fixer slides into the pool near the cluster of important types. He does it casually, like he just happened to choose that spot, as if he didn't scan the room first to make sure his timing was perfect. Within a minute, he's joined their conversation, not too eager, not too distant, dropping in a remark about a new road project, a recent trial, a shipment arriving from overseas. The talk around that group shifts. Names surface.
of people, of districts, of clients and patrons, and sink again. The tone stays light, but the underlying current is serious. You can hear it in the pauses, in the way people glance around before finishing a sentence. Deals are not made outright, they are suggested, hinted at, given shape in unfinished phrases. You tilt your head slightly, listening just enough. This is how some Roman careers move forward. A quiet promise here, a subtle question there, a favor mentioned while pretending to comment on the weather. All of it happening while toes wiggle under warm water and someone occasionally calls for more oil. A quirky little tidbit, there are anecdotes of emperors posting notices in baths, or people using bathhouses to catch the attention of powerful patrons they otherwise couldn't reach. Imagine planning your political strategy around accidentally sitting in the same pool as your boss's boss while hoping you don't slip getting in. Back on your side of the pool, a younger man sighs dramatically. I came here to relax and ended up in the middle of half the city's business meetings. You get it. The baths promise escape, but they also double as office space, therapy, barbershop, cafeteria, and group chat. Sometimes you just want the steamy nap part without the networking patch. You decide to float. Literally. You lean backwards until the water lifts more of your weight, your head resting against the stone edge, your ears dipping just low enough that the sound of voices blurs into a gentle underwater murmur. From here, the room looks different. Upside-down faces, ripple-warped ceiling, light skimming along the surface like spilled silver. You can still pick out pieces of life happening above you. Told him if the price doesn't change, no, the magistrate said next month. And then the lawyer tripped into the pool. Laughter ripples around that last one. You resist the urge to sit up and get the full story, but you file away the mental image of some proud advocate skidding straight into the water mid-argument. You wonder briefly how many grudges have been softened, not solved, but softened, by the sheer ridiculousness of seeing your rival with wet hair and a towel that keeps slipping. Eventually, you slide upright again, blinking away a few stray droplets. On a bench just beyond the pool, someone has set up an impromptu consultation. A man in a plain but well-cut tunic leans forward, fingers steepled, listening as another explains something with rapid gestures. It's not loud, but the intensity is obvious. Maybe it's a business deal. Maybe it's about a legal case or an inheritance. Maybe it's just two brothers arguing about who should care for their aging mother. In Rome, important conversation covers a lot of ground. Books and dusty inscriptions tell you about emperors and battles, but here in the bathhouse, history looks like this. 100 small decisions made in damp air between people who will never get statues, but will absolutely affect who eats, who pays, and who goes home in a much better mood. You realize that your own role in this moment is beautifully simple. You're not here to negotiate, to petition, or to impress anyone. You're just floating through the scene, an observer with wrinkling fingertips and a heart rate that has dropped into the almost nap range. The politics, the deals, the awkward, almost eye contact meetings, they swirl around you like steam, touching your skin and then sliding away. After a while, the heat of the water and the gentle hum of conversation start to lull you again. Your mind wanders back to your sandals in the changing room. Please still be there. To the Firmus crews below, keeping all this possible. To the boy at the snack stall, still ladling out lentils. You sit a little longer, arms resting on the pool edge, feeling the room slowly shift as people come and go.
The group of officials eventually rises, wrapping themselves in towels and drifting away together, conversations continuing in low tones.
The two men pretending not to see each other last a few more minutes before one finally stands, sighs, and leaves. The awkwardness follows him out like a loyal dog. You take one deep, slow breath and let it go. You've had your share of the Bathhouse's social weather for the day. You've floated among the deals without getting caught in them. Now it might be time to slide toward quieter corners again. Spaces where status matters less than how close you can sit to a warm wall without falling asleep. You rise from the pool, water slipping off your skin in soft sheets, and step back onto the smooth stone. Behind you, the room continues to buzz. A small, misty parliament of everyday citizens and not-so-everyday power brokers, all united by the simple fact that everyone is slightly pruny. Ahead, the baths still have a few stories left for you. About who gets to bathe when, about the invisible lines of class and gender that shape this place, and about the hidden machinery under your feet that keeps it all running until the day's final echoes fade. You walk on, warm, relaxed, and grateful that in this particular Roman meeting, your only agenda is to keep breathing and possibly not fall asleep in the next pool.
You keep moving, letting the warmth of the last pool linger in your bones as you wander along another corridor. By now you've seen a lot of the baths from the comfortable center, the exercise yard, the hot rooms, the snack stalls, the politics pool. But every big public place has edges, the corners where the rules become visible, not because someone posts them on a wall, but because of who is there and who isn't. You start to notice that now. The hallway you're in opens toward an outer court, not as fancy as the main palestra, but still busy. A few older men sit wrapped in towels, clearly done with serious bathing, and now just soaking up residual warmth and conversation. A couple of kids dart around, small boys mostly, chasing each other and being shushed desperately by an exhausted-looking relative who clearly regrets bringing them. You catch a glimpse of an entirely different entrance across the way. It's not the big, impressive doorway you used this morning, but a side door, narrower and more practical. Women pass through it in small groups, cloaks pulled around them, voices low but animated. A matron with a serious expression leads the way, and behind her a younger woman carries a bundle of towels, hair braided and pinned. Their path barely crosses yours. It's more like two separate rivers running in parallel, close enough to see, but not meant to mix. Mainstream historical fact. Men and women in Roman baths did not usually bathe together, at least not officially. Often they had separate hours, women earlier in the day, men later, or separate sections entirely. Some sources complain loudly about mixed bathing as a moral horror. Others seem quietly resigned to the idea that it happened sometimes anyway. You watch the side door for a moment. It opens, it closes, and for a second you see only a slice of the world beyond it. A dim hallway, a different pattern of light, the edges of another routine. You don't follow. This isn't your side of the schedule. But knowing it's there changes how the building feels. The bathhouse isn't just your story. It's a layered stack of stories that share the same pipes and fires, but not always the same rooms. A group of slaves passes by you, arms full of laundry, towels, cloths, whatever counts as clean enough to reuse in a world without washing machines. They move quickly, heads a little lower, skirting around anybody standing still. Their path is like a river cutting through the crowd, never quite allowed to stop. You step aside automatically, and they pass with murmured thanks that sound more like habit than conversation. Up until now, it's been easy to treat the baths as a kind of democratic wonder. Everyone's sweating together, everyone's scraping off dust together, everyone negotiating over snacks together. And there is some truth to that. You've been sharing water and air with people richer and poorer than you all day. But the more you walk, the more you notice the little lines. At one end of a corridor, a small sign, painted or carved, marks a reserved room. The people heading into it are neatly dressed, even in towels, their jewelry simple but clearly expensive. An attendant stands by that doorway, subtly redirecting anyone who doesn't belong. He doesn't have to say, "Not for you." A slight shake of the head, a tiny step into the path does the job. Over by a plainer doorway, no one guards the entrance. The room beyond is crowded, louder, maybe a bit rougher in smell. That's the cheap end of the baths. Still warm, still functional, still worth going to, but without the extra touches of decoration or attentiveness. A couple of boys in patched tunics joke loudly as they go in, one pretending to be a senator giving a speech about improving towel quality for all citizens. His friend nearly collapses laughing. A quirky little detail. Archaeologists have found bath tokens, small lead or bronze pieces stamped with marks that may have indicated different classes of service or payments. It suggests a system where not everybody got the same deal. You could come in as a basic user or as someone who expected upgrades, better oil, nicer stasis, more reliable attendance. Ancient in-app purchases, basically. You pass an alcove where a woman sits on a low stool just inside that side entrance you saw. She's not bathing, she's waiting. Her hair is covered, her cloak drawn about her shoulders. Maybe she's a slave waiting for her mistress to finish, ready to help her dress and carry her things. Maybe she's a vendor's daughter, minding a small basket of combs and pins to sell when the women come out. She watches the flow of people with calm, tired eyes. She sees you glance over, and for a second your gazes meet. There's no drama in it, just a quiet acknowledgement that you live in overlapping maps of the same building. You turn away first, not out of rudeness, but because the corridor shepherds you along, back toward the men's spaces. Historians still argue whether poorer Romans used the baths as often as wealthier ones, or whether the entry fees, towel rentals, and optional extras added up enough to keep many people away. There's evidence that some emperors subsidized the baths to keep them accessible. There's also evidence that certain sections catered almost exclusively to the well-off. The truth, like most truths, probably sat somewhere in the middle, shifting with time and budget cuts. You duck through an arch into a quieter, smaller chamber. This room is warm, but not crowded. A couple of older men sit almost motionless along a bench, eyes closed, arms folded. Beside them, a thin, nervous-looking man keeps adjusting his towel as if it might offend the gods by slipping an inch. He glances up when you enter, then relaxes when he sees you're just another ghost in the steam. This feels like one of the edge rooms, out of the main flow, slightly away from the heavy traffic of deals and hot water.
It's the kind of place where people go when they don't want to be seen as much. You sit down and realize slowly that some of the people who make this place work will never use it the way you do. The furnace workers downstairs, they live in a different climate entirely, choking heat without the luxury day after day. The laundry haulers, they know the baths only as piles of damp cloth and sore shoulders. The vendors, they skim the edges, smelling the steam without ever slipping into it. You soak your feet in a shallow basin, letting warmth creep back up your legs. The older man beside you cracks one eye open and gives a small nod. "Quiet in here," he murmurs. You nod back. "Nice change." He smiles faintly. "The forum has too much shouting. The baths have just enough. This room," he adds, gesturing lazily, "has the right amount of nothing." You stay there for a while, doing nothing right alongside him. At some point, a handler appears at the doorway, glancing in to see how many bodies are still inside. The bathhouse has its own schedule. Certain rooms will close earlier or later, cleaned and reset for the next wave, sometimes rearranged depending on whether women or men will use them at different times of day. You are one small data point in that constant, quiet logistics problem. You get up again, feeling the familiar mix of reluctance and readiness. You're not being forced to leave, not yet, but you can sense the day turning. The light slanting in through high windows is different now, less white, more golden. Somewhere an attendant calls out a reminder that closing isn't far off. People begin to calculate how many more dips, gossips, and towel adjustments they can fit in before the building exhales the day and shuts its doors. As you wander back into one of the main halls, you pass the big entrance again. Newcomers still trickle in, if only for a quick rinse before the end, while others drift out, hair damp, eyes heavy, already half outside in their minds. Workers at the margins start to tidy, gathering stray cups, straightening benches, fishing an abandoned sandal out from under a seat. You can't help wondering whose sandal that is, and whether they've already realized they'll be limping home. The bathhouse, seen like this, is both generous and picky. It lets many in, but not everyone at the same time, not in the same way. It blurs some lines, naked or towel-wrapped, rich and poor alike, but reinforces others. Hours, doors, guarded spaces, unspoken glances that say, "You belong here," or "You belong over there."
You step aside as another group of women is ushered discreetly through the side entrance, cloaks pulled close, faces turned slightly away from the main flow. Once again, you only see a sliver of their world, a glimpse of a separate hall, the edge of a different soundscape, the echo of laughter not meant for you. You move on, carrying with you the realization that your bathhouse day sits at the crossing point of all these invisible lines. You're a temporary citizen of this steamy little city, walking its main streets and side alleys, sharing its warmth with people you'll never meet outside its walls. The water doesn't ask about your rank. The hypocaust doesn't check your status. But the way you enter, where you sit, and who you bathe beside, all of that is quietly negotiated under the surface. And as the day edges toward closing, you're about to meet another layer of that hidden system. The pipes, the channels, the buried heat rivers that ignore social boundaries completely and simply do what they were built to do, carry water and warmth
until the last bather leaves. You turn your steps toward the far end of the complex, where the floors feel just a little warmer and the walls hum with a deeper, hidden life.
By now, you know what the baths feel like. You know the way warm stone presses against your back, the way steam curls around your face, the way cold water bites and lets go. You've heard the gossip, watched the deals, survived the scrape, and eaten the lentils. You've been the soft, surface-level citizen of this place all day. Now, as the light outside starts tilting toward late afternoon, you start paying attention to the part you don't usually see. You're walking along one of the main corridors when you notice something simple. The floor slopes. Not dramatically, just enough that if you drop a bit of water, it will pick a direction and roll along the stone instead of forming a stubborn little puddle. The slope is so gentle, you don't think about it when you arrive. But now that you're half foggy and fully relaxed, your brain has freed up some processing power. You pause and watch a droplet fall from your elbow. It hits the floor, hesitates, then starts its tiny journey, sliding along a barely visible groove in the tile. It joins another droplet, then another. Together, they disappear into a narrow gap along the edge of the corridor where a stone channel waits. You follow the line with your eyes and realize the whole building is quietly directing water like this all day long, from floor to drain to somewhere you've never bothered to imagine. Mainstream historical fact time. Roman bathhouses relied on carefully planned water systems, both to bring water in and to take it away. Aqueducts, lead and terracotta pipes, settling tanks, drainage channels, all of it working together so you can casually splash around and complain that the pool is a bit too cold today. You lean lightly against a wall and feel a faint vibration. It's not dramatic, just a subtle hum, like the building is purring. Somewhere inside the thickness of that stone, warm air is still rushing through hypocist channels, hot water is slipping through pipes, and cooler wastewater is trickling out towards sewers or irrigation ditches. The baths are not just rooms, they're a living plumbing diagram. You wander toward a quieter wing of the complex, where attendants are less focused on managing people and more focused on managing the building itself. Down a short flight of steps, a door stands slightly ajar. From beyond it, you hear the slosh of water and the low murmur of men working, not talking. You're not exactly invited back there, but you're not exactly thrown out either. Maybe you just hover near the threshold and let your imagination walk further than your feet do. In your mind's eye, you see the aqueduct that feeds this place. Far outside the city, water collects in a spring or a carefully built reservoir. It travels along open channels and covered conduits, stepping its way across valleys on great stone arches. The slope is so gentle, barely a drop over long distances, that it feels like magic, but it's really just math and stubbornness. The water flows and keeps flowing day after day, because the Romans have decided that gravity is their favorite unpaid employee. At the edge of the city, that water enters distribution tanks, castella, where it's split into smaller streams. Some go to fountains, some to private houses,
if you're rich and impressive enough, and some toward the great public baths. How much each gets? That depends on valves, politics, and whether anyone has been accidentally adjusting the flow overnight. Historians still argue whether these allocations were strictly regulated or quietly fiddled with by whoever had the longest ladder and the least supervision. Inside the bath complex, the water no longer travels in grand arches. It sneaks through. Terracotta pipes run behind walls and under floors, feeding cisterns you never see. Some tanks hold cold water straight from the aqueduct. Others sit near hot furnaces, letting their contents warm gradually before being released into pools and basins. A system of taps, plugs, and weirs lets attendants decide when to refresh a pool completely or just top it up. You picture a worker somewhere below, using a long pole to lift a stopper from a drain at the bottom of a pool. The water roars down into hidden channels, taking with it the day's sweat, oil, stray hairs, and one unfortunate ring that slipped off someone's finger during an enthusiastic splash. That water doesn't just vanish. It flows into sewer systems, out toward rivers or fields beyond the city, where it might end up irrigating crops. Congratulations, part of your bath may one day become someone's barley. A quirky tidbit. Archaeologists have found evidence of complex filtering systems and settling basins in some Roman waterworks, suggesting that they weren't just dumping raw aqueduct water straight into everything. In some places, sand, gravel, or simple holding tanks helped remove the worst of the grit. Was it modern sanitation? No. But was it better than, "Hope the river is in a good mood today"? Absolutely. You move along the corridor and glance down through a grating set in the floor. Below, in a narrow, dim passage, you catch a flicker of furnace light and the shadow of someone moving. You hear the scrape of a shovel, the thud of wood, the low rush of flames. The hypocaust is still working, though a little less fiercely now. As evening inches closer, they'll let some fires ease off, allowing rooms to cool gradually instead of slamming off like a sulking god. The hypocaust itself is another hidden marvel. Pillars of little tiles, pilae, holding up the floor, leaving enough room underneath for hot air and smoke to circulate. Stand in the hot room and you just feel floor warm. Stand under it and its floor will cook you alive if you're not careful. Two realities, one piece of stone. Historians still argue whether all baths maintained optimal temperatures all day, or whether they cycled heat more aggressively to save fuel, letting some rooms cool at certain hours. Judging by the labor and wood costs, it's not hard to imagine a few cost-cutting moves, especially if an emperor wasn't in a generous mood that year. You keep walking, and suddenly something clicks. All day, you've been at the very top of this system, floating in the final product. But beneath you is an entire stack of spaces where people coax water and heat into cooperation. Aqueduct engineers, pipe fitters, furnace crews, cleaners, maintenance workers, they all exist so that for a few lazy hours, a crowd of citizens can sit around arguing about grain prices in pleasantly warm rooms. You pass an open service hatch where an attendant is checking a narrow channel. He leans down with a lamp, watching water trickle past, making sure there's no blockage of leaves, trash, or someone's dropped soap substitute. He uses a hooked tool to pull out a wad of something unidentifiable, flicks it aside into a bucket, and closes the hatch with the weary satisfaction of a person who has prevented a small flood you'll never know almost happened. A thin, chalky ring along some pool edges catches your eye. Mineral deposits left behind by hard water, little ghost borders that tell you where the water line usually sits. The baths are not pristine, they're maintained. You can see the marks of that maintenance everywhere once you know where to look. Patched tiles, replaced sections of pipe, new stone beside old stone, like a living creature constantly renewing its skin. You pause in one of the main halls and tilt your head back. High above, vents gape like quiet mouths, helping steam escape so the ceiling won't weep too much. Above those vents, the outside sky stretches where clouds drift, rain falls, and somewhere,
Miles away, your bathwater's journey began. You are one tiny stop in a long chain of flowing, heating, cooling, draining, repeating. You suddenly appreciate how extremely not simple just taking a bath is in this world. In your life, water appears when you turn a knob. Here, water has traveled miles, trickled through carefully planned gradients, slipped past valves, poured into cisterns, been heated by men feeding roaring fires, passed through floors balanced on stacks of tiles, and finally arrived at your shoulders in a nicely decorated room where someone is complaining that it's not quite hot enough. You smiled to yourself. If the aqueduct engineers could hear that complaint, they would probably invent a new Latin word for "really?" You let your hand rest against the wall one more time, feeling the faint warmth, the low hum of the building's hidden arteries. The baths aren't just a set of rooms. They're the visible tip of an enormous, carefully tuned system. And like most infrastructure, it works best when no one thinks about it at all. But you're thinking about it now, just for a little while, before you go back to being one more relaxed body floating on the surface. As you turn away, heading slowly toward the parts of the complex that will lead you back to your clothes and the evening air, you carry that awareness with you. That every sigh of comfort you've let out today was powered by a chain of stone, water, fire, and human labor stretching far beyond these walls. Soon, the furnaces will quiet, the taps will close, the last drains will gurgle. The bathhouse will cool, settling into its nighttime bones. But for the moment, the systems beneath your feet are still humming, still carrying warmth and water to anyone who wants to squeeze in one last soak before the doors close on the day. And you? You've got just enough time left for one more slow breath in this steamy, engineered calm before you step back into the unpredictable currents of the city outside.
You can feel the day changing even before anyone says a word. The light pouring through the high windows has shifted from bright white to a softer, honeyed gold. Shadows lengthen along the walls, stretching like drowsy cats. Voices are quieter now, not because there are fewer people, though some have left, but because the ones who remain are more tired, more relaxed, less interested in making grand points, and more interested in not moving unless they absolutely have to. You're one of them. Still, the bathhouse has its own sense of time, and it's gently letting you know that you're approaching closing. Not abruptly, there are no harsh bells or shouted orders yet, but in small, subtle ways. An attendant wiping down a bench instead of waiting for the next person. A boy stacking empty oil flasks in a basket. Someone fishing a forgotten cup from beside a pool, shaking their head with the resigned air of every day someone leaves one. You drift back toward the changing room. On the way, you pass the caldarium again. The heat is still there, but it's less fierce now, like a fire that's been allowed to burn down to steady coals. Fewer people occupy the hot pool. Those who remain are sunk deep, eyes closed, looking like they might become part of the tile work if left alone. From somewhere behind the walls, you hear a furnace door close with a dull, final thud. Another follows. Mainstream historical fact: large Roman baths usually had set hours. Fires were stoked early in the morning and allowed to die down toward evening. The staff still had work to do after the doors closed, cleaning, draining, preparing for the next day, but the public parts of the experience followed a rhythm as predictable as the sun. You step through a familiar arch and find yourself once more in the apoditrium, the changing room where your day began. It looks different now. Earlier it was bustling, a noisy swirl of cloth and sandals, arguments and misplaced belts. Now it's quieter, though not empty. A few people are already dressed, adjusting cloaks, checking their hair in small mirrors or reflective bits of polished metal. Others sit half-wrapped, gathering the will to wrestle themselves back into real clothes. You walk toward your niche with a small flicker of anticipation and dread. You remember carefully choosing it, third recess from the column, above the guy with the red cloak, below the slightly crooked brick. For a moment, as you get closer, you imagine it empty, your cloak gone, your tunic vanished, your sandals spirited away to live a new life on someone else's feet. You picture yourself walking home wrapped in a towel, inventing elaborate curses for invisible thieves. Then you see it. Your cloak folded in its lumpy way, your tunic exactly where you left it, your sandals, toes still pointing outward as if they have been patiently waiting to walk you home. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding, a tiny, private sigh of relief. You start to dress. The fabric of your tunic feels different against your freshly scraped skin, rougher, but in a satisfying way, like it actually has something to cling on to now. You pull it over your head, arms sliding out through the sleeves, the familiar weight settling onto your shoulders. Your cloak follows, its wool warmed a little by the room, smelling faintly of smoke and the outdoors. As you sit to strap on your sandals, you notice a man a few niches down who has not been as lucky. He stares at an empty recess with an expression that's equal parts disbelief and resignation. "I know I left them here," he mutters to no one in particular. Nearby, an attendant shrugs, palms up, the universal sign for perhaps the gods wanted new footwear. You catch the man's eye briefly and offer a sympathetic half-smile. The baths give a lot, but they do occasionally take a pair of sandals as tribute. A quirky tidbit flickers into your mind. Ancient graffiti from around the empire includes complaints about stolen items in baths. Clothes, sandals, even jewelry. People have always been people, and no amount of marble and engineering changes the fact that someone will walk off in shoes that are very much not theirs. You finish tying your sandals and stand,
feeling the return of your full weight on the soles of your feet. It's a quiet transformation. Nothing visible changes about you except your clothes, but inside you can feel the shift from bathhouse creature back to city person. Your shoulders sit a little differently under the cloak, your spine adjusts to bearing your usual weight again. The relaxed, slow rhythm you've lived in for hours begins to sync up just a little with the faster pulse waiting outside. Historians still argue whether people in cities like Rome truly felt the baths as a break from their everyday selves, or whether it was simply one more stop on a crowded schedule. For you tonight, it has been both, a familiar, almost routine place, and also a separate little world where time stretches and the city's sharp edges get smoothed down. You step out of the changing room and into the main entrance hall. The collector is still at his post, though the tray of coins is smaller now, some of them likely already tucked away. He looks a touch more tired, the way someone does after hearing versions of the same question all day. A few new arrivals slip past you, clearly hoping to squeeze in at least a quick rinse before the doors close. You know they'll get the gentler, end-of-day version of the baths, the leftover warmth, the fading steam, the echo of a place that has already done most of its work. You walk toward the main doors. The sound of the city leaks in around the edges first. Wheels on stone, voices in the street, a dog barking somewhere outside. It feels thinner after all the layered echoes inside, like going from a full orchestra down to a simple flute. You cross the threshold. The evening air meets you with a cool, almost shy touch. The street is bathed in the low light of a sinking sun, buildings glowing softly, long shadows lying across the cobblestones. The sky is turning color, blue giving way to streaks of orange, pink, and eventually the first hints of purple. For a moment, you just stand there and breathe. You smell dust and cooking fires, a hint of animals, the faint sweetness of someone selling roasted nuts nearby. Under it all, you still carry the ghost of the baths, oil, steam, hot stone. You're halfway between two climates, one fading and one fully alive. Behind you, the bathhouse continues to exhale. More people emerge, cloaks swishing, hair damp, faces relaxed. A worker steps out to prop the door partly open for a bit, letting heat and steam bleed into the cooling air. Somewhere inside, furnaces are being banked, coals spread out to die slowly. Buckets splash as attendants start washing down floors, brushing away the day's sand, hair, and secret spilled stories. You turn away from the building and start walking. Your steps sound different now, sandal leather on street stone instead of bare feet on warm tile. Your muscles move with an easy looseness that might last into tomorrow if you're lucky. The city's noise flows around you, but it doesn't bite as sharply as it did this morning. You've been softened, smoothed, filed at the edges by hot water, scraping metal, and gentle hands. As you walk, little details from the day drift back through your mind. The first bite of cold in the frigidarium, the silk-warm air in the tepidarium, the heat heavy in your lungs in the caldarium, the careful curve of the strigil, the man at the snack stall warning you away from the fish stew, the laughter in the pool when someone told that story about the lawyer slipping into the water, the distant thud of furnace doors, the quiet woman waiting by the side entrance. The baths, you realize, are not just a building full of water. They are a place where the city briefly rearranges itself,
all its classes, moods, worries, and small joys poured into a shared bowl, stirred with heat,
and poured back out into the streets at dusk. You've been part of that mixture today, just for a while. You round a corner, and the bathhouse slips out of sight behind other buildings. But it doesn't quite leave you. Some piece of you is still there, in the steam and echoes, in the hollow spaces under the floors, where hot air whispers through tiled pillars. Some part of the bathhouse is still with you, too, in the lightness of your feet and the looseness of your shoulders. Night is coming. The baths will close, cool, and settle into silence until another dawn wakes the fires and opens the doors. And you've had your full day inside those warm, echoing rooms. You've seen the baths not just as clean stone and pretty mosaics, but as a living, breathing system of fire, water, work, and rest, all wired together so that for a few hours you could simply exist, soak, and let your thoughts drift like steam toward the ceiling. You take one last slow breath, let it out into the evening air, and head home through the soft, fading light. Now, as you lie, wherever you are, in your bed, on your couch, maybe in a too comfortable chair, you can let the Roman streets quietly dissolve. The cobblestones blur, the doorways fade, the distant rumble of carts and voices softens, like someone gently turning the volume down on the whole city. You don't have to walk anymore. You don't have to decide which room to visit next, or whether the water is too hot or too cold. You're already on the other side of the day. In your mind, you can still feel that last wash of warm air from the bathhouse as its doors drift closed. Imagine the furnaces settling down, their fires no longer ferocious, just a red, breathing glow in the darkness beneath the floors. Above them, the empty rooms remember the day, the laughter, the splashes, the quiet, private sighs, and then gently let those memories float away with the last wisps of steam. The pools grow still. Water that spent all day carrying voices and ripples rests now, smooth and glassy in the dimness. A single droplet slides from a ceiling arch, lands with the softest plink, and then there is only stillness. The hypocaust channels cool, tile pillars exhaling their stored warmth slowly, like a giant creature falling asleep after a long, satisfied stretch. You don't need to hold on to any of it. Not the conversations you overheard, not the small worries you brought in with you, not even the little smile you had when you found your sandals still in their niche. All of those can stay there, in that warm, distant place, folded into the stone and water like a story the building will keep for you. Right now,
There is just your breath. In and out. Slow and easy, like the tide in a quiet harbor. You are clean enough. You are tired enough. You are safe enough. Let your thoughts drift like steam to the ceiling and disappear. Let your body grow heavier, as if you're sinking into a perfectly warm pool that holds you without asking anything in return. And if any last images remain, the curve of a mosaic, the shimmer of water, the glow of furnace light beneath the floors, let them grow softer, dimmer, further away, until all that's left is darkness, warmth, and the slow, steady rhythm of sleep coming to find you.